Hey, everybody! We're live. It's James. I got the hat on today because I didn't do my hair on this Friday. And I didn't want to do it at 7 p.m. and then have to wash it out right after. But that's me. That's a me thing. Um, Hello to everyone joining in the chat. Always love to see it. We got Ed excited. I'm excited too. We got Marilyn just in time. Love it. Bianca, can't wait. Well, you don't have to wait anymore because we're live. And then we got Kathy chiming in with hoping for a green. And this is of course in reference to Sherwin Williams, which is what today's live is all about. We're on this topic of good old color trends for 2025, and Sherwin-Williams is one of the big players in this industry. It's one of the paint companies we feature a lot because a lot of you guys like Sherwin-Williams and use them, and they have really cool offerings both on the product side of things and the color side of things. So really excited to get into this today. I haven't really reviewed it in depth, so we're going to go through this together. Just as a little side note as well, if you were here for the last live a week and a half ago or so, I was playing music because music's nice, like during the intro and the outro. And there's always like this copyright thing with YouTube, clearly killing time just because people are coming in. But anyway, copyright is a huge thing with YouTube. So playing music, you got to be really, really careful. So I figured, okay, I'll use public domain music. I'll play some good old Tchaikovsky, Nutcracker. It's like, great, I'm fine. The winter season is upon us. I just representing my Russian heritage, only certain parts of it. But I got copyright, not striked, but claimed for playing Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky, who's been, rest in peace, dead for quite a while. I didn't get claimed by him. I got claimed by the Berlin Orchestra. So apparently the music is fair game, but maybe not that particular recording. So I'm still on the search for music. But for now, we'll just do a bit of an applause because now we can officially start. So Roxanne, hi. Bianca, hi. SF, great idea. Get your own drums and give us a show. Not to get into my story a little bit, but I used to be a bit of a drummer. I played a bit of piano, did some singing, so maybe I could do like a jingle. I think that'd be fun for the next one. I can't copyright myself unless I'm like really twisted, but why don't we get into this? So, for those of you who don't know, Sherwin-Williams every year, like a lot of companies, they do their own take on the color of the year. But it seems like they aren't really fixating on one color. They're giving us palettes. And obviously we love palettes over here. Palette pyramid guy, right? And what's nice is there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of different things happening here. And I gotta tell you, I had a hunch where things were heading. I had it last time on the live stream. My background, it was brown. So let's get into it. This is the Sherwin-Williams website. This is kind of the little graphic they did, kind of showcasing the colors, the 48 colors for 2025. So let's see. Capsules. So we got Chrysalis, we got Paradox, it's just a little cut off there, Wellspring, and then Kindred. So those are the 4 palettes. The whole collective color mix forecast for the year, it's capsules. So each one kind of represents its own little capsule of color. And there's quite a bit going on here. Like as we're kind of playing this through over and over, you'll kind of notice there's different vibes. And the first one, right on display, it's a dark background here. It's kind of brown, capsules, right? And then Chrysalis, some dark neutrals. And then Paradox, which is the opposite, bright. Wellspring, dark colors. Kindred, kind of light colors. What I'm trying to say, it's a lot of variety here. A little bit for everyone. And we can even see the 4 just next to each other static, so we can kind of analyze them a little bit. And yes, Chrysalis, the first one, neutral, but not white, right? So there's something there. And then Paradox, a lot of color. So I feel like for the people that hate neutrals, that are just like sick of it, Paradox gives you an option of like, hey, we'll give you all the colors now. So you're good either way. And then these two, I think, are a little more interesting because Wellspring, based on this one tiny little image, it has dark color, like dark, rich, jewel tony kind of colors. And then the furniture surrounding it, a little more organic feeling, a little warm, a little, clean. So then the colors of the wall really stand out a little bit more. But there's still kind of a shaded, good old dusty quality. I love a dusty quality where it's not completely in your face, full saturation, vibrancy cranked to 11. There's like a little bit of a softness to it, even though it's super rich, right? And then Kindred, I mean, you can't really see it too well here, but we'll get into the palettes themselves in a second. From a top-down view, it's kind of a pastel-y sort of vibe, right? It's especially compared to Wellspring, and you can see with these curtains here, the drapes. It's a lighter color, more of a mid-tone, I would say, but pinky. So it's kind of taking Paradox's coloration, like the fun, free sort of feeling colors, but more to the depth of a Chrysalis kind of mid-tone neutral. And yes, there's still some of that muted touch to it. I think with these colors of the year, for the most part, you'll have some eye-catching colors, and you'll see some in the Paradox palette for sure. And then everything else is a little more toned down a little bit, so it's something that you can actually see yourself using, right? Let's look at some of these comments before we get into the actual palettes. So Ed Porter, this is before I actually revealed it. It's going to be a reddish color, I believe. Very, very astute observation, because I think we've seen it the last couple of years, right? Like with red, terracotta, clay, earthy, warm colors. I don't think that's really going away, right? I think it's something that is going to always kind of be here in the zeitgeist of color and interior design. But it is a little bit different, right? We're seeing maybe a departure away from, and this is like really early impressions, right? But a departure away from those more orange-based terracottas, and now it's a little more earthy, grounded, a little more neutral. It's kind of a pendulum, right? It's swinging a little back towards neutral, but it's a different neutral now, it looks like, to me. It looks like a little darker, like darker neutrals, basically. And I think, yeah, red undertone neutrals more so than anything, perhaps could be the new thing. So we're talking about rougey gray, beige kind of colors, right? SF, I love brown. It's funny. It's like brown is one of those paint colors that I feel people dismiss because it's just like, because people tend to have, brown furniture, so maybe you don't want to go so samey with your colors. But we can see here, and even with Wellspring to a certain degree, there's brown in different degrees, but the furniture is light. So you get that contrast and you get that variety. And I think that, really helps with the overall look. Stephanie Hill, looking for some inspiration to change up the house in 2025. Well, hey, guess what? Color mix forecast for 2025. It's a pretty good place to start. And these aren't colors that, are set in stone where you have to use them. Like, you're going to be super lame if you, deviate. I don't think it's that at all. This is just, trends, right? So trends are obviously transitory. They're cyclical in a lot of ways, right? But it's always fun to see what's happening, to give you some inspiration, see if, something resonates with you in a really cool way, like some of these colors. And if they don't, then you know what not to do, right? Cool. I prefer toning my colors with brown compared to black. Yeah, that's a good idea because brown compared to black, they obviously have some similarities in terms of darkness, right? But brown always is going to give you a little more warmth, a little more earthiness, a little more of an organic touch, which is always welcome in my books. And Marilyn with the magical Marilyn. Great. Awesome. Okay. let's get into these palettes, right? So we have 48 colors. Sherwin-Williams, you don't need a color of the year. Just go with 48. Take your pick. These just have their whole color catalog as their color mix forecast. All jokes aside, though, what I do like about Sherwin-Williams, and I swear we'll get to the colors in a second, but just a little side note. I really enjoy what Sherwin-Williams does when it comes to these annual color palettes because it does give you more variety, obviously. And within these palettes, I do notice that there will be colors of the year from the not so distant past that reappear in future color mix forecast palettes. And I think that's important because it lets us know that, hey, you don't necessarily have to change everything every year, right? Like Urbane Bronze was cool when it was announced. It was also kind of featured in future palettes because it's still a cool color, right? What it does is it gives you another opportunity to reimagine certain colors that maybe were really popular last year, 2 years ago, but with other colors and kind of reimagine in ways that maybe you wouldn't have thought. So I do like that. Some people might see it as just like boring recycling old colors from the past and just kind of repurposing them, but no, I like that. I think it almost adds validity to their choices because it's like, yeah, we pick cool colors, we pick them for color mix forecasts, and we reuse some of them because why deviate when you don't need to always? Okay, Chrysalis. Actually, before we do that, no, let's do this. Okay, so Chrysalis, I'll put it up on the screen right away. This is the palette here. And keep in mind, this is the first palette that they're showing. This is like the big boom. Here we go. Great. These are the colors. And if you notice, there's a lot of brown. There is a lot of brown. So obviously, Grounded right here is being showcased. Mex to be talked about more. And it has kind of a combination of burgundy with red, and there's a blackened aspect to it. And it's that black that cools it down enough where you sometimes get a little bit of a purple tinge, which is really cool. I think it's awesome. I think it's such a cool color. I'm really glad they're showcasing it. And then, yeah, there's a lot of brown, a lot of warmer colors, even Studio Mauve. Like, technically it's cooler leaning, but not by much, right? And then you have a little bit of green, but there's only 3 of them. And what's interesting about that is I almost see these as the secondary options to all of the other browns. Like you have a green undertone color, it's going to complement anything that is more red undertoned or warmer. So these are kind of like I guess you can call them main colors too, especially Mindful Gray, where maybe this could be something that you have in a bulk of the home or the hallway, and then these other colors can sort of fit in as the accents. So then you get that, 30, 70, 80, 20 sort of split. But at the end of the day, this is a brownish kind of palette, right? And I sort of see it as a bit of a reimagining of neutrals, right? Kind of taking the beiges from the pretty recent past, the grays from the slightly further past, and now we're seeing more richness, more ability to just get a bit deeper. Because Grounded, it doesn't look super dark on this wall, but it's a dark color. We're talking a 12 LRV. Like there's some blacks that are basically that dark, right? So that tells you something. I think we have, like in here, this furniture that's lighter, right? So again, there's that idea of contrast where maybe you're able to go a bit darker because everything else in your room is a bit lighter. Maybe you have amazing big windows too to let in a lot of natural light, which gives you more options. Like you can still go with a shiitake if you want. Good old shiitake, expert pick for a reason. I just think it's more interesting if you can afford to go a bit deeper with your colors. Speaking of deeper, we got Paradox. How about this? Can I do a... There you go. Hey, you know what? It's fun. I feel like paint companies will tend to do this though, where they want to satisfy everybody, and there's going to be people that will love this palette. Maybe not for their home, maybe for the new kids' toy set they're thinking of designing potentially, right? You have quite a bit of color here, a lot of variety, but I don't know. There's something that's kind of nice about it, right? It's nice to look at, right? It's nice to sort of just observe. Um, but in terms of using it in your home, like maybe a restaurant, a commercial space, like an office, a really fun office where you're trying to like, boost sales, get those numbers up, right? Then this could work. I do like that there is just unadulterated, pure saturation, pure color happening here. Like you have a really pure magenta. You got this beautiful, slightly warm yellow leaning deep green, frank blue, which is like blue blue. It's not navy, it's blue, 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 blue. But then you got a brown, so it's kind of trying to be in line with Chrysalis a little bit. There's something tying it in, which is nice. So yeah, just a lot of saturation. Like the colors I would likely use from this palette for me, I mean alabaster, obviously, it's one of my favorite off-whites ever. Egret white, which is just a great wall color if you need something really passive and not all of this, right? And then slow green is actually one I haven't really used or even know a lot about, to be honest, but it's one of those classic, beautiful, muted, bluey green colors that I do enjoy, especially in places like bathrooms. It's amazing. And not only on walls, like if you can even have alabaster walls, keep it nice and crisp without going too sterile, and then slow green on the vanity. I've done something quite similar to that, and I love it. And a bit of a bathroom tangent too. The reason I like these colors here, especially if you're someone who has like a glass enclosure in your shower, if you have like, good old tempered glass with the green edges, the glass will actually have a slight green tinge to it, right? So it's not something that you necessarily think of, but it helps get that tied in if you kind of go with a color like slow green. But yeah, I'm sticking with slow green, not these super fast, insane colors. Euphoric lilac is pretty as well. And then inkwell. I mean, what you're getting here is an off black blue lean, right? It's kind of nice actually, the fact that it does two things at once, right? It's a black, like a charcoal, like a deep charcoal, let's say, but it's cool leaning. So, in certain lighting conditions, you could almost see it as like a really dark navy. Like it has that effect to it. Okay, Chrysalis done, Paradox done. How do we feel so far? Do we have any preferences? Is the sound okay on this? Let me know. Let's go back to some comments here, because I did see some come in. SF Carnelian looks like a nice kitchen cabinet color to me. You don't say. I think so too. Carnelian is similar. Like I say this a lot when it comes to those dark kind of ruby red colors, but Preference Red by Farrow and Ball. Let me see if I can pull up an image. It's an amazing color, and there is an image of it with kitchen cabinets painted, and it is just so nice, combined with black, believe it or not. I've used this image a few times, so if you've seen it already, then you're ahead of the curve. Great. Where is it? Oh, actually no, I was mistaken. It is on the walls, and the cabinets are black. Here, let's see if I can get it for you. Right here. Don't know what website this is, but this right there. How nice, right? So it's like you could flip that, right? You can go with black walls and this sort of Preference Red or Carnelian on the cabinets, or you don't even need to go with the black. But this is a kitchen that's using a like-minded color, and I think it just looks really cool, right? Don't think I can pull it off in my house as it is right now, but Okay. Couple more comments. Garage doors, great idea. Um, oh, cool. CL, I'm getting ready to paint a powder room with carnelian. Absolutely awesome. I think like if you're using it on the walls, the powder room is probably the first place I would think to use it. Powder rooms are great. I mean, it's like your own little testing ground where you can just sort of put any color, and it's gonna work, right? Because it's own enclosed space. And what's great is it's a showpiece for your guests because they're inevitably probably gonna end up in that room, you know. So might as well show them a good time in there. Yikes. SF, that will look wonderful. I think so too. I love that color. I used actually um, carnelian in a dining room, and it looked beautiful. Like there was French antiques everywhere, so you had the carnelian kind of dark, rich red walls with like beautiful wooden, like a hunter's cabinet, and a little, bar area. Everything was just gorgeous, like a server. Um, and then what we did was we took that same color, and then in the adjacent, I guess it would be a family room or living room, the room that no one uses, right? The kind of the room for show. We took that red carnelian color and put it on the ceiling, and then had the walls be just like an off-white. So it's kind of a yin yang type of relationship they had, and they were just kind of diagonal from one another. So you can see them in their sight lines through the French doors, and it was a little back and forth they had. I thought that was kind of cool, personally. Kathy, great idea on kitchen cabinets. Absolutely, yeah. Um, Obviously kitchen cabinets, if you're getting them professionally refinished with like a lacquer and all that, it's a big project, right? It's very costly. So if you're not doing it yourself, you're getting it professionally done. I always caution people to make sure you really know what you want, right? You don't want to get into a position where it's like it sounds good and then you get it done, it's like, oh, maybe I should have just stuck with white or something. Not that I would recommend that. Like, I love color. I've never really had white cabinets myself, but it more so than walls with kitchen cabinets, make sure you really are certain. And you can use tester boards just like walls. You can even ask the person doing it for you if they can actually spray out the color on wooden cards, so you can actually see what it's going to look like with the paint itself on a substrate or a surface that is similar to what your cabinets are. I think that'll give you a really good impression of how it'll look. But I mean, I think it's awesome. Paradox, perfect. Let's wrap this up because Paradox is like, it's hurting my eyes a bit. Great palette for furniture. Hey, that is a great point. I think this is an awesome accent type of palette, right? So you're not going to I'm not going to make a palette pyramid necessarily for someone's house using 6 of these colors. I probably won't. But I could maybe use some of these colors, right? And then for that really fun chair that you want to revitalize, boom, rejuvenate. There you go. Because the thing about accents is like, it should be 10% basically of the visual space. So if you have that pop of color, it'll really cut through, those neutrals, that kind of neutral canvas in a beautiful way. So it's a great point. You should be the host. Jeez. Ed Porter, rustic neutrals kind of gives earthy and farmy to me. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we love earthiness. It just feels grounded, right? Those earthy colors, your browns, your greens, your dusty sort of organic colors. There's that connection to nature, that feeling of being home. Familiarity. There's a lot of really cool things about all those types of colors, and warmer colors in general for me. Like I'm kind of biased towards that. And Marilyn M, I like the idea of a dark ceiling. Hey, give it a shot, right? Just be aware, again, sounds good in theory, but if you don't like it, you probably got to paint like 4 coats to get that white back. Just letting you know. But dark ceilings, kind of like dark walls, they tend to give you the illusion of a taller room. The ceiling looks like it's kind of going up because dark colors absorb more light, so that light is traveling up and kind of bringing your attention upwards as well, which elongates the room, height-wise. So that is a big perk, I would say. Okay, Wellspring. Let's get into it. Here we go. Now this one, right out the gate, it interests me. It is, I would call, a bit of a fusion of the last two. And I mean, obviously we have the brown leaning colors, and it's the one that's being prominently featured in Warm Stone. But again, this is a dark color. We have a 20 LRV. So a fifth of the light that hits it is reflected. Everything else gets absorbed. So that is a dark color. And what's nice is it's a warmer leaning taupey color. Sometimes can give you a little bit of a green undertone depending on your lighting, right? Because there is more of, I would call, a yellow beige warmth rather than the brown or red leaning warmths we've seen in Chrysalis. But you also have, some red undertone colors here to complement them. So it's like now you're again working with very slight green undertone, not so slight red undertone here, and persimmon and borscht. Shout outs to all my borscht fans watching. If you've ever had a beet soup, it'll warm you up. Gotta tell you. We're having fun tonight. It's Friday night, guys. I didn't do my hair, unfortunately. Bit of a bad hair day, but this is fun. And then, like I mentioned earlier, look at this. Upward. January color of the month, color of the year, right? This is what Sherwin-Williams does. They do a great job at bringing back old favorites. And by old, I mean last year's color of the year, or this current year's, right? So that's good for the people that just will gravitate towards what's trendy, because if you used Upward in your bedroom or your bathroom or even your kitchen, you can keep it. You don't need to repaint. In fact, why not put some gallery green in the room across from it? So you have a clear picture of what colors work really nicely with one another, and that goes for colors that maybe you used last year if you're kind of keeping up to date with this. So it is an interesting kind of mix, right? You have these warmer colors, obviously more warm leaning reds, Bosque pear or Bosch? Bosque pear. Boss pear? Cool. Kind of a harvest yellow, autumnal sort of gold color, right? There's a orange undertone, a little bit rusty, right? I actually would prefer it maybe if it was a little bit more red leaning to me, right? But I guess you have enough here and here. French roast is one color that I was actually thinking might be a color of the year option. It's a deep brown with a dark red undertone versus, maybe carnelian, which is a deep red with a little bit of brown. So it's kind of, similar, but also opposite in ways. And then oyster white. Actually, we got a shout out for oyster white right here. Oyster white is nice, not too beige, would look great with dark furniture. I like contrast. And you will get contrast with oyster white, right? It has 72 LRV, so not in true white territory. We can even see in this picture here, right? There is, it's a muted, very light neutral. Kind of grayish, right? There is a little bit of beige and gray happening. And I don't know how it looks on your screen. On this screen, it kind of looks like it has a touch of green, but in person, it's a very soft greenish, right? Like I think I would call it that. So in certain cases, you might not notice any green. It'll just be kind of a nice, soft background color. But I think I'm into it. I mean, soft green beige undertone. There you go. So, I mean, how can I complain about that, right? And then très naturel, very boring beige, but amongst these colors, I think it's good to have one of those, like one of those just nice safe colors. Upward we talked about. I do like Upward, right? It's nice. It's kind of the epitome of airy, just like optimistic about the future, and I do like that. Outer Space, another one of those dark colors, but I think in this case, instead of, I think it was Inkwell. Yes. So obviously lighter than Inkwell and way more blue forward. This is kind of, I always call outer space a slate blue. Like if you have a slate gray, this is that, but with the blue cranked up. And I think it's a really, really interesting choice. Because it gives you some flexibility. It has a 12 LRV, right? So it's still quite dark, but I don't think, if as long as you have like pretty decent lighting, it's not dark enough where it'll look just like an off black. Like there is some noticeable coloration to it, which I think is nice. And there are, there's a darker color obviously in the palette, so it's not even the dark color of the choices. So can we skip over this one? No, I'm kidding. Chartreuse, probably the most electric, dynamic color option there is. I mean, doesn't it belong in this palette, right? Like it's so bright. And the thing about chartreuse, if you don't know, it's actually kind of a combination of yellow and like a golden yellow and green. And that green really makes it just super off-putting to some, right? But not me. I think it's really fun, and I think it's definitely an accent choice though, right? It's that little, like you could have painted these wax apples or whatever they are chartreuse, and they can be that little pop of fun. But a wall color, speaking from a painter as well, horrible to paint because there's so much colorant that would go into that paint color. And normally, I mean, it depends on the product, but the more colorant that goes in, it tends to affect the performance and the coverage. So if you're doing it yourself especially, I would maybe pass. Maybe go for persimmon. Still a lot of colorant, but just a little more easy to work with. And then we have the two greens, Green Bay and Gallery Green. And this is kind of a cool combo, right? We have two different takes on green. Green Bay, definitely cooler leaning with a blue undertone. Gallery Green almost feels like a really deep, sort of minty sage green. Like it has a little more of a dusty feel to it. But it's on the warmer side of green, right? There is a little bit more of that yellow undertone, and we can see that pretty clearly, I think, with these two next to each other. So good choices. It's an interesting palette. Like it's not too predictable where it's all one note or just all over the place like the last two. But I don't really necessarily see the cohesion too much. Like I was hoping for, more true jewel tones, but it's not bad. It's an interesting mix, I would say. I can maybe work with this one. And then we got Kindred. Boom. Okay. And hey, look, red endpoint. Red endpoint making its return. So we had Upward, one of the featured colors of 2024. The actual color of the year from 2023 makes its appearance here. And to be honest, I think they could have just made red endpoint the color of the year again. Because I do see a lot of these red undertoned, mid-tone to darker neutrals becoming pretty popular, especially when it comes to wall paint, right? And you have that, you have Rookwood Red, Caribbean Coral, Coral Kicks. You got a double coral dose, which is great. And then even Sun Bleached Ochre, a little more coral than ochre, I would say, right? There is the red undertone that's sort of pulling that orange away from feeling too yellow leaning, which is really, really cool. And then the other colors, just kind of a mix, right? You have Tidewater, so another one of those like kind of sea foamy colors. Storm Cloud, which is a little bit similar to Outer Space, but just a bit lighter. Icy Lemonade, which is, it's fun, right? It's a fun color. And then Rookweed, okay. It's another brown, right? Another one we've kind of seen, but this one is dark. It's 4 LRV. Wow, I didn't know it was that dark. And then Dark Night. Okay, so yeah, like a lot of dark colors, but there's also this balance in this palette where you have these sort of pastel leaning colors. Like with Coral Kicks, LRV 68. So not objectively that light, but when you compare it to a 4 LRV color, that's a huge load of contrast. I like how the website just brings you back to Chrysalis. Like, this is the one they really want you to see. This, you just got to lean in, guys. Neutrals all the way, right? Wow. Okay. And then Creamy. Creamy, one of my favorite. Benjamin Moore. I'm just kidding. Sherwin-Williams whites. More creamy leaning, warmer. I do like Swiss Coffee by Benjamin Moore. I think that might be my favorite. But creamy is like up there too, right? I think it's a great color. It's light enough that you could pull it off on trim, especially if you want that warmer look. But it's also has some coloration that makes it a suitable wall color without going too stark, which I think is important as well. But yeah, I like this one. I think it's interesting. This pairing that they use here is Dark Knight and Creamy. I think that is really cool. And then you have, some of these coral colors in the, is that cherry blossoms? I don't know. In the flowers, right? So it's like, it just shows you that you can use these colors outside of paint as well. And I think they do a good job at showcasing that, which I think is really fun. This is pretty unique. I think this is probably the most interesting palette of the bunch that I think, is fairly usable, but you still have to be open to color, right? You still need to be open to the idea of all these. So what I would say is, like, Chrysalis is probably going to be the color palette for most people, right? Obviously, neutrals. But within this palette, there is some variety, right? You have your browns, obviously. You have some beiges. You have some, warm-ish gray greens happening here. You have carnelian, obviously a beautiful rich red. You have a mauve, which is like obviously kind of a lilac, lavender gray color, right? So there is that color, but it's a little more muted and passive, which I think is nice. So you probably start here, and then what I'm thinking, you have no reason not to explore these other palettes if you want to perhaps add some accent colors or even secondary colors for different rooms. Like, for example, shiitake, I keep going back to it for some reason. Let's say mindful gray, it becomes kind of your main color, and then that's just sort of like the color that you're going to kind of paint a large part of the house with, maybe. And then you can try going over to, let's say, this Kindred palette that I kind of like, right? Now hey, if I'm picking a room and I want to like change it up, great. You can kind of work within these colors. You can go exactly with the example they gave you, Dark Knight, Creamy, cool. Red End Point if you want to go a little more earthy, but that is a bit redundant if you look at all the Chrysalis colors, right? But because Red End Point's here, it shows you that if you do have a neutral that is maybe more red leaning, a little earthy, it can go with a lot of different colors, right? So it just is a nice visual aid that I do appreciate. And I really do like that they just harken back to their greatest hits of the past. So very, very fun. So, okay. SF, I like Creamy. Is it yellower than Oyster White? I would tend to say probably. I can even pull them up for you so you can see them on this screen for you. That's an oyster. Not very white, is it? Maybe the inside is, but... And then yes. Creamy oyster. So, yeah, I think what you'll get with Oyster White more is that greeny quality. Like, it's because there is a little more saturation. There's that gray aspect happening here. There's more to it, right? It's not as simplistic as Creamy, which is just more of a very soft, pale, creamy, literally a creamy yellow color, right? But it's a soft yellow. It's not like highlighter yellow. That's going to be too off-putting. So Creamy compared to Oyster White, yeah, you'll get a little more of that yellow, but Oyster White does have more to it. It's a darker color, so you might notice it more within its coloration, right? But yeah, if you're okay with yellow, if you do want that kind of warm, like sunny sort of soft feeling to it, then Creamy would be, obviously the clear option over oyster white for sure. Okay, let's go. Go back to some comments here. Let's see. So we got. Okay. We're caught up. 09 Max. Hi James, I'm redoing my bathroom. I have a dark gray vanity. I'm looking at a light blue for the walls. What light blue do you recommend, please? I mean, there's a lot of options, right? But I think your best bet is a good starting point if you want to go a little more monochromatic and go with something that is kind of essentially in that same sort of realm. See if you can find a dark gray that is a little more blue leaning, right? Like a little more of a cool vibe. And if you can find it in any color collection on a color chip that's arranged from darkest to lightest, you can actually just stick with that cool dark gray and then go up the color chip to, maybe the third or the second or the first lightest variation and start there, right? And I think that's a good option because it's going to match up pretty well, right? It's as long as the color chips are arranged in like specific hues, right? It's the same color hue and just different levels of depth essentially, then you'll have nice contrast and you'll know they won't clash. So I think that's a good place to start. If you feel that's a little, like if you, let's say, pick that color and, it's a bit too light, you can go a notch lower and see how that looks. I find that to be a great starting place for a lot of people. And then if you want to, let's say, deviate a little bit and maybe go into different directions in terms of undertones and things like that, then you can kind of see what else is maybe in the room that you can kind of pull from, whether it's a little memory foam bath area rug that you have. You can pull a color from there, or maybe the tiles, you can kind of extract something from there. So that would be my advice. So light blues, there's tons of options out there, right? There's so many different interpretations of what light blue even is, not to get too meta, right? But I would start there and then grab color chips, get some color boards and samples painted, bring them into the space, see how you like it. It's kind of the standard advice, but it's there for a reason. But hey, just to throw a color out there, Upward, a great color from 2024. Give it a shot. Orlando, right now I'm painting a whole house in Greek villa with bathroom ancient marble. Kind of fits the theme. Oh my goodness. I love when you can do this and pull it off, like colors that the names just kind of fit. Like I love doing that. Like almost telling a story with the colors that you choose. And when it works out, it's just so much fun because then you can kind of have that conversation piece of, yes, I live in a Greek villa house with ancient marble bathroom. Like it's pretty cool. And then you maybe paint your closet, Zeus gray or something. That's a real color. It should be, honestly. Shoutouts to Zeus. Okay, and then SF. I noticed that the colorant affects my painting skills. I love dark colors, but I can't paint them well. Yeah, so this is going back to the whole chartreuse thing, right? When you have a paint color, whether it's really dark or extremely vibrant, it usually takes a lot of colorant to get that color. And this depends on company to company, right? Some companies, they're pulling it off a little bit, right? But historically, when I first mixed paint in my late teens, and I actually would tint paint, you would use colorant in the paint and it would almost feel like it's watering down the product. And if you've painted before and you've used these dark colors, you'll know that that's kind of the case. And what that translates to is you're essentially getting less material of the paint product itself and more of the colorant, and that gives you bad coverage. The paint is runnier, it takes more coats, and it's pretty problematic. In some cases, it's better to just prime it first, right? Get a tinted primer. That's kind of been the advice for a while. And it's still recommended just to sort of get you halfway with a primer rather than your expensive top coat, and then go from there. But technology is improving. So now paint companies are starting to reformulate their colorant. I know Benjamin Moore, the Gen X technology that's come out, kind of revamped their entire colorant catalog, and the coverage has improved because of that. Like the colorant, the consistency is almost a little closer to what the paint is itself, which is kind of nice, and it means that you tend to have better coverage. But it's still like it's a trial and error thing, right? So depending on whatever product you use and what company you gravitate towards, you still might run into those problems. But if you love the color, you got to do it. You know, you got to do the 3-4 coats to get that color properly. Orlando, a lot of dark colors show imperfections on the wall. Yeah, it's true. For a couple reasons, right? Like, obviously, just darker colors in general have that effect. But typically, what I've noticed with some paints, a lot of paints, is more colorant can sometimes lead to slightly more sheen level. So what you might have is a flat paint, but then you tint it to a black, let's say. But now that flat sheen almost looks like kind of a low sheen eggshell a little bit because of all the colorant. It gives it a bit of a shimmer, and so that could be a thing that you need to consider as well. I find I like midtones when it comes to hiding imperfections. You know, your good old 60-ish LRV range. Bright colors are pretty good, but they're also really prone to getting dirty and scuffs. So a midtone is always going to be recommended from me, just to give you kind of the best of both worlds when it comes to hiding imperfections. We recently did a video on that if you want to check it out. And also, while you're at it, press that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, to stay up to date with these lives and our content that's coming out. And just also as a little side note, next week we will be doing a live on Wednesday. I'm not sure what the schedule is long term in terms of Wednesday, Friday, but today's Friday. I think it's going pretty well. I'm enjoying myself. I hope you're enjoying yourselves too. But next week's Wednesday live stream is very important because it's Benjamin Moore's Color of the Year announcement. And I think they're actually going to have a Color of the Year. They're not just going to have the color mix forecast colors, which were great. Right, I'll put them on the screen again just so we can all relive it together. Just let it run. But it's also nice to have the one definitive color to be like, we're putting our flag in the dirt. We're drawing the line in the sand. This is our choice. But it's kind of a cop-out, right? They just kind of pick 48 colors, and then you decide what's the real color. Is rockweed a purple? Okay, let's take a look at it right now. I'll tell you. So rookwood red, a historic color. This is a red. So it's more of your traditional historical red that we all know and love, right? It's pretty standard, I would say. I mean, it could look a little purple leaning, especially if you have cool lighting to sort of pull it in that direction. But I would say, I mean, even you can look at some of these. Yeah, it's quite red. If that's the color you were talking about. Rockweed. My mistake. Yeah, rockweed is I almost call it an espresso brown, right? It has like a deep, dark chocolate brown quality to it, which, just like the one we talked about before, whenever you have a shaded blackened brown, that blackened quality in a paint that shades it can sometimes pull it into a cool direction. And when you have brown, which is kind of a red undertone color at its core, cooled down, it can go a little bit purple sometimes. So yeah, espresso brown, maybe like a black bean soup kind of vibe, but like really dark. You can kind of get a hint too about what sort of undertones are happening, not always, but in a lot of cases, based on the other colors that are kind of paired alongside it on Sherwin-Williams' website. So you can kind of go through these and you can, black bean, perfect. It's like I knew. Black bean, a little harder to tell because it's dark. Raisin, even darker. But then you start getting into these deep forest brown, domino, bohemian black, black swan, which do lean a little cooler. So that gives you a little hint that maybe rockweed isn't fully on the warm side of things. In fact, it might kind of be teetering the line between warm and cool. So yeah, long story short, I wouldn't call it a purple, but there are some circumstances where maybe it could seem that way, but you got to test it out. Dark Knight is another one I would use in the kitchen. Yes, absolutely. Where is it actually? Definitely not here. I think it's in Kindred. Yeah, Dark Knight, beautiful color. Yeah, I mean, you got this beautiful aquatic deep blue with that green undertone to kind of pull it into teal territory a little bit. It's funny how they say it has slate undertones. I've never really heard that. I almost see it like as an overtone. Like the slate quality is sort of a grayed out feel, but this has a lot of saturation. Like it's more, I would say it has more black than gray even. Really rich color. Absolutely a cabinet color choice, especially on an island. I still like the kitchen island color being different from the others. Some people are like a little tired of it, but it's almost like the powder room of the kitchen cabinets in a way, because it's the one little thing that you can really feature and stand out and express your creativity without committing to all your cabinets, right? You're only sort of dealing with that one piece. So yeah, Dark Knight, great color. This is nice. Keep this going. We got an LOL from Orlando. Do I have a laughing sound effect? I got a rim shot. There you go. Boom. Cool. LOL. Okay. A couple more questions, and I think we'll call it a day, a live, and then of course on Wednesday I'll be back. How light of an LRV would you paint the wall so it doesn't get washed out on a sunny day? I'm looking at a 70 LRV. Great question, Mark. So for those of you who don't know LRV, welcome to the channel. I've been called the LRV guy as opposed to the color guy. Light reflectance value. It is the percentage of light that a color reflects, that you get back into your eyeballs, basically. The more light a color reflects, the closer it is to 100, the lighter and brighter that color will appear. So light colors typically I find them to be more popular with my customers just in general, because people like their house to feel bright and airy most of the time. They want light to be reflected back into the space, which I think is fair. You want to be able to see what you're doing in your home. The problem with light colors is if they're too light or there's too much light hitting them, they cease to become colors. They get washed out. Exactly what Mark said, right? Where it's just bright and non-specific. The undertones that you loved about that color, the reason you picked it, because that subtle nuance, it gets erased because of all that light that just overwhelms it. And this is more so the case on those sunny days where that light is really pouring in. So the question is, which LRV should you aim for? I don't want to say it depends, but it does. It depends on the color in terms of, what's happening, like what kind of colorant is in there. If it is pretty saturated or if it's pretty muted. I think the more muted it is, the more you have to be aware that it's likely to get washed out. 70 LRV, generally speaking, I think is in a pretty good range. I would like it to be maybe closer to that 63, 64 range, my ideal range. So I find a lot of colors that are in those low 60s, they tend to work the most in most situations. They work well. They have enough coloration where they won't just feel like primer, right? That's kind of what you're trying to avoid. But a 70 LRV color, that's maybe on the cusp a little bit, but it depends on the color. I think you should be in good shape though. It's 70, it's not 78, right? So I think that should be fine. And you'll get a nice kind of airy, bright space with a color like that, which is good. Oh, GE, late for the party. Oh, no. But hey, we're still partying. Party goes on. No worries. Half my house is Tidewater. Love it. Much more of a blue. Let's pull up Tidewater. Great color. So yeah, this is an interesting point actually, Mark. So let this load up. And I love it when Sherwin-Williams does this on the website. It is the old website. Some colors, they give you the old renderings. But hey, it's familiar. It's what I'm actually more used to than the new fancy ones. So Tidewater, Mark, actually, I'll put up this comment for you. So it is more of a blue in person, and you tend to see that. So these kind of bluey greeny colors, maybe grayed out colors as well, they tend to go a little more blue, largely because of how lighting works in our home, both in terms of natural light that's coming in. So if you have that indirect sunlight from, let's say, a northern exposure, which is like a bit of a taboo word in the design industry. No one wants northern exposed rooms, but I like them. I think every exposure, it's fun. Like it transforms your colors and actually makes them make sense in your space. But anyway, north facing rooms tend to get indirect sunlight, which is not warm. It's cooler light, a little more blue leaning, which means it accentuates the blue in a color like Tidewater. So that's something that you can be mindful of too. I don't necessarily want to fixate on, north facing, south facing. You can confuse yourself like crazy, right? It can give you a nice starting point if you know some of the general rules, but ultimately you got to test the colors out, right? Like that's what's going to give you tangible information to help you solidify your choice one way or the other. So yeah, Tidewater, great color, but yeah, it could be a little more blue in person, whether you have northern exposed rooms that they're in, or LED lighting and your pot lights that are more tuned to be cooler. It will accentuate that. So if you do want something more green, then hey, maybe I should go a little more green. This is kind of on the cusp. It can kind of go either way, really, but great color. And half the house too. That's awesome. Really leaning into it. Kind of a coastal feel, which is great. Spend a lot of time on the water when I used to sing on cruise ships. Humble brag. Cool. Okay. Oh, good spa feeling color in the bathroom, GE. Great question. It's on the screen. I think Tidewater, pretty spa-like. I really enjoy that color. So that's a good place to start. Okay, let's do a couple more. Let's see. How's it going, everyone? Are you guys good? You enjoying? All right. Oh, sea salt, yeah, total spa color. Sea salt, rain washed, those are great options for sure. Holly, how awesome you're live. I love some paint talk on a Friday evening. Don't we all? Cheers to that as I sip my no-name brand grapefruit water. Not sponsored. Cool. This is great. I love the interaction that you guys are having with each other as well. SF, yeah, I take the time to putty, sand and prime, putty, sand and prime, putty, sand and prime. Great. But yeah, just a reminder, Benjamin Moore, Wednesday, I believe it's at noon. So it will be an earlier live. Maybe I'll make a community post actually for you guys. And essentially we can see if that's a time that works for everyone. I kind of want to do it live and, react to it on the spot. But if most people just want to wait till the evening, we can do that too and just sort of relive it together. So yeah, I'll leave it up to you guys. If you can make it, great. If not, if enough people can't, then maybe we can wait. But I'm obviously going to see it ahead of time. So I'm totally going to go for the spoilers. Okay. I think that's a live, guys. My wife just texted me actually, and we have dinner. So I'll try and answer some of your questions in the comment section. If I don't get to it, hopefully come in the next live and I can respond. Yeah, I hope you had fun. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you have a great weekend. I know I will. And take care, everyone. Bye-bye.